Welcome back to Retoro Review, where myself and Retoro take a look at games and review them. We use two rating systems when reviewing games, the first of which is the tier list, which covers the objective aspects of the game. This system is based on if the game is worth what it gives you, if it provides style and substance, if it can keep you engaged, and if it offers great replayability. I'll also evaluate the controls for intuitiveness, level and puzzle design comparative to its rating, and objective fairness. X tier is reserved for the best at all categories, while F is considered the worst of the worst. The second rating system is my personal subjective standpoint on the game, and will be based on if the game captures my attention, if it exceeds my expectations, and if it's something I would play again or recommend personally. And on the graph here, the worst games are considered offensive, while the best ones go over to addictively fun. At the end, the game gets put on the graph based off of how both evaluations line up. I try to condense these videos down to about 20 to 30 minutes, so if you've got the time, this is the video for you. If you're still confused, stick around, you'll catch up. You know, I think I did that one so well, I'll just copy and paste that onto the rest of them. Saves me recording and editing time. Today, we have a game very near and dear to my heart, Splatoon 3. Splatoon has been one of the defining series of my adolescent years, and even did the unthinkable to 15-year-old me. It was actually cooler than Sonic the Hedgehog.
No way!
Everything from the lore, to the energy, to even the music captured my attention as a kid. Fast forward to today, and we're on our third mainline entry in the series, and it is currently in Nintendo's top 10 IP list, garnering an absolutely enormous fan base in East Asia, and a huge casual following over here in the West. Of course, to start evaluating the true worth of this game, we gotta start with the story. For newcomers of the series, Splatoon is known to have some of the wackiest stories in recent history, and a lot of the story and lore this series has provided has been at the forefront of its success. Upon stepping foot into Splatsville, you get your first main news broadcast from the Three Stooges, Shiver, Fry, and Big Man, officially known as the podcast, news, and musical group Deep Cut, where they not only deliver the news of the current turf war battle stages, but they also present breaking news that the Great Zapfish is missing. The Great Zapfish is a giant electrified catfish, not an eel, who is so electrified that he is responsible for powering the entirety of the surface world. That's right, every power grid, every Wi-Fi router, every convenience store is powered by the ambient power of the Great Zapfish. Safe to say he's pretty powerful. Anyways, the Great Zapfish alongside a bunch of other miniature Zapfish have been stolen, and the perpetrator is still unknown. Now, us veterans were used to this. The last couple of times it happened, we found out pretty quickly it was due to the Octarian leader, DJ Octavio, a quirky, angry octopus DJ making funky fresh beats with a giant spaceship armed to rival the United States military. We're pretty sure he did it this time, but hey, look at that old homeless guy in the sewer. After following the old coot into the sewer, this geezer reveals himself to be none other than Craig Cuttlefish. He gets to know us and our small salmonid friend, Lil Buddy, and officially dubs us as New Agent 3. He used to be the captain of the Squidbeak Splatoon, a faction of soldiers trained to fight the Octarian army. In days of old, some 100 years ago, the Inklings and Octarians lived in harmony before they became power-hungry for land, resulting in the Great Turf War, basically World War III. DJ Octavio and Captain Cuttlefish were once homies, like brothers, but when their paths diverged, they fought for their own respective sides, and the Inklings won over the land on the surface, leaving the Octarians with the scraps of the land underground in barely survivable conditions. This led to their eventual semi-friendly resentment of one another. Craig here became constantly paranoid that DJ Octavio would always try to steal the Zapfish and stage an uprising, while DJ Octavio would always try to slowly assemble armies of Octarians to build upwards towards the surface. Fast forward to today, Octolings, humanoid versions of Octarians, not unlike the Inklings, have moved en masse to the surface, and they are generally living in harmony, though it took some time. That doesn't stop good old Craig's racism. This man immediately blames DJ Octavio for this one. I mean, kinda warranted. The last two times it actually was him, but this time we confront him pretty early, and it turns out it wasn't him. He's actually here on the surface because he noticed his Octarian troops went missing, reducing his army to basically zero overnight. Now, throughout the first few stages to get us acclimated to the controls, we notice we've been fighting Octarians, but if you're unfamiliar, they're not supposed to be covered in fur. They're cephalopods, just like the Inklings and such. These Octarians have been heavily modified somehow, and it looks like this furry goop is to blame. Before we can gather ourselves with Octavio, the battleground we fought him on collapses as the fuzzy goop destroys everything around. Everyone falls down into the abyss below, and Cuttlefish himself gets dragged down by a mysteriously large and fuzzy tentacle. We also see a few minutes after that the Three Stooges have stumbled upon the crater and got a little curious about what's inside. After waking up from our boop on the head, we explore this new underground world known as Alterna, where we meet up with the rest of the new Squidbeak Splatoon, Agents 1 and 2, real names Callie and Marie respectively, who are also idol pop stars and newscasters known formally as the Squid Sisters, and then previously known as Agent 3, now promoted to Captain 3, who represents the playable character in the first game. The three of them actually happened to get stuck in here before we even got down here, and have been slowly studying the area around. They put us to work going stage by stage to collect these power eggs, which drop from crates and defeated enemies. See, our little buddy can actually eat the fuzzy goop, but he needs those eggs as energy, prompting us to get more. Eating the goop reveals more of the accessible world to us and allows us to progress, because we need to find old Coot Craig and figure out how to leave. In the process, we also learn more about Alterna and realize that this place actually was the last survivable location for humans some 10,000 years in the past. In the lore of Splatoon, Earth is post-apocalyptic, happening way in the future after the event known as the Great Flood, a fairly realistic imagining of how climate change could result in cataclysmic damage and restructuring of Earth, its oceans, and the rise of the next most intelligent animals in the animal kingdom, being cephalopods. Yep, that means almost all mammalians and reptilians have completely been wiped from existence, leaving marine life and birds as the primary survivors. As we uncover details, we realize this civilization started strong as a scientifically optimistic attempt to counteract the flood, or at least ride it out until they could construct a spaceship to jettison their way off-world to somewhere else, presumably the moon. The humans, unfortunately, never could get that far in the process, and all slowly perished here. Apparently, this is also where the first truly intelligent cephalopods were created through genetic experimentation, which is a cool tidbit for the lore. Anyways, the stages are set up as trials with different challenges that reward us with the little power eggs we need. Sometimes it's just get to the end of the stage, other times it's defeat a certain amount of enemies under a timer, other times we're given a specific special weapon for stage traversal, sometimes no weapons and we just have to dodge danger, and so on and so forth. From here on out, the story is relatively cut and dry. Alterna is broken up into islands. 3 of the islands have boss fights, and each of them we find out one of the 3 Stooges has gotten a hold of some honestly random items that we don't know anything about until the end of the story, but stick around for a moment. Really, they're treasure hunters, and they thought that by exploring Alterna, they could return to the surface and pawn off their findings for riches. They're not really trying to hurt us, but they do get in the way a little bit, and put themselves in unnecessary danger by doing so. Their encounters basically sum up to being negligent and incompetent more than anything else. Throughout the story, though, we get these little tidbits about what's going on behind the scenes. We hear loudspeaker noise of 2 characters arguing, which one we can reasonably assume is Craig Cuttlefish, and another mysterious figure. The farther we progress, the more the layers are peeled back, until we finally figure out that the real villain is Mr. Grizz, a giant grizzly bear and one of the last surviving mammalians. Us veterans know Mr. Grizz quite well. In Splatoon 2, he was the mysterious entity known for opening up Grizzco. Grizzco hosts Salmon Run, a game mode we'll get to later, but for now just know that as an employee of Grizzco, the player is simply tasked with killing these salmon creatures because they are trying to encroach on Inkling territory and breed to create more salmon creatures. We're just fending them off. The real reason he cares, though, is because salmonids create golden eggs and power eggs more than any other sea creature, and as we've seen with Lil Buddy, these eggs are really powerful. Combined with the power of the great Zapfish, this man is reaching Infinity Stones levels of power compared to everyone else. See, Mr. Grizz hates that mammalians fell, and thinks that the rightful dominators of the surface world should be mammalians once again. He intends to mass produce more of this fuzzy goop and pack it into a rocket that will explode it and rain it down all over Earth to either wipe out or forcefully convert all of the cephalopods walking on land into mammalians under his rule. Worse still, he has been steadily creating this goop to make himself more powerful and literally enormous in the process. We finally find a use for those random items from defeating Deep Cut earlier, and the 3 senior agents assemble a weapon that literally shears away all of the remaining fuzzy goop on the islands, although after using it, does leave Captain 3 visibly winded. Anyways, we ascend the final area, which is a rocket launch station, and find the great zapfish contained and being drained of energy to power this whole operation. But we are a little too slow to stop Mr. Grizz from draining the ink from Craig, leaving him shriveled and near dead. In a very rare showing of emotion, Captain 3's crying rehydrates him. Sort of, but that setback does allow Mr. Grizz enough time to launch his rocket into space. Luckily, Deep Cut used their quick thinking and powers to help us get out of Alterna and into space. We face off against Mr. Grizz on his rocket on our own at first, but we just aren't powerful enough to defeat him. Just when we're feeling down and out, DJ Octavio flies up from Earth in his own spaceship and saves us from being lost out in space, giving us a second chance. The 2 idol groups back in Alterna kick into overdrive and start singing the infamous song Calamari Incantation. I pause. This is important. I can hear it now. Why are they singing? In Splatoon lore, Calamari Incantation is an age-old mantra that quite literally magically empowers all who hear it. No, I am not joking. This song is magical. The Squid Sisters, about 10 years ago, repurposed it into a pop song, and its effects were so powerful that they've been known to break mind control, change the minds and hearts of Octarians, fill all who hear it with determination, and in this instance, combined with Power Eggs out in space, upgrade our little buddy into a fully fledged salmon. And he has a kaiju battle with Mr. Grizz, while we use DJ Octavio's newly upgraded spaceship to literally vacuum up the wells of furry goop exuding from Mr. Grizz to damage him and prevent it from raining down on Earth. With this now sucked up combination of ink and fuzzy goop, we turn it back around on Mr. Grizz and blast his ass to high heaven, literally nuking him to death. Mr. Grizz is never heard from again. Yay, we did it! We saved the day! Captain 3, what do you have to say for that? And that's the story. This is the wackiest Splatoon story has ever been by far. Usually the stories focus on themes involving oppression, capitalism, the social pressures of fame, climate change, and such, while still being kinda goofy. This is the first time the mainline story has mostly focused around a villain just being a villain because he wants to. At least when Octavio captured the Zapfish, he was doing so for his people, because they otherwise have to siphon power from the surface, which is wildly inefficient. Octavio isn't necessarily a villain, but Mr. Grizz just straight up is. No noble cause, no ulterior motives, he's just evil. And in a way, while it is refreshing, it would have had a bit more impact if the story revolved around making the Earth more habitable for humans instead of just forced conversion. Which, by the way, if you lose the fight, it's revealed just how unstable the fuzzy goop actually is, and we see that even if Mr. Grizz succeeded, the Earth would literally turn into a furball. I don't know, it just feels more superhero action-y than inherently Splatoon-y, but I'm not mad at it. I remember when I was making videos for this game regularly, I recorded the final part for the story, but never uploaded it, and I straight belly laughed when the whole premise was revealed to me. Not my favorite story in Splatoon, but still fun in its own right. Splatoon 3 also has its DLC in the form of Side Order, so I'll go over the story of that one real quick too. The other major idol group in Splatoon is called Off the Hook, and consists of the as close to canonically lesbian without actually explicitly stating it as possible couple, Pearl and Marina. See, Marina is a tech whiz, an absolutely incredibly intelligent nerd who has taken it upon herself to develop a game for honing your skills. She developed it to be a virtual reality training simulator for herself, Pearl, and their friend from Splatoon 2 and the other player character, Agent 8, to use whenever they needed it. And she planned to mass produce it, but things went wrong. She developed this game in between tour dates, and so she let her coding skills slip, allowing for a glitch to form in the game, which literally sucked her inside. Pearl and Agent 8 get brought into the game as well, and immediately begin looking for Marina, and in the process figure out that this glitched code has turned her into a boss battle against her will. After breaking her free, we learn more about the game, why it was created, and the gameplay system as a whole. It's a roguelike, which means after each stage, we put earned points towards leveling up our character to face increasingly challenging levels ahead, and the entire process is structured within a huge tower. We get some amount of freedom in which stages we choose, which determine how many points we can level ourselves up by, and therefore what upgrades we can equip ourselves with, but if we lose at any time throughout the process, we are sent all the way back to square one and have to build up our levels all over again. Upon reaching the top of the tower, we find the main villain, the glitch, known as Order, which turns out to be this little baby guy, Smallest. Oh, look at him, he's so cute, and Pearl instantly nicknames him Baby Puss. Anyways, his goal is to create a perfect world within not only the game, but also real life. Marina's code was so potent that the game world started leaking into the real world, which is how the three of them even managed to get thrown in here in the first place. It even expanded to another indie musician, Acht, a former close friend of Marina and fellow defector from the Octarian army. Acht is more or less a bystander, but they serve as a voice of reason to Agent 8 throughout their travels through the tower. Baby Puss over here is completely opposed to the idea of change and variation, which is the exact opposite of what Marina wanted. She wanted the game to be varied and different to ultimately be fun and helpful. We try in vain to defeat him, but his influence bleeds into reality itself, and he almost hard reboots all of reality, but the power of Agent 8's resolve and Off the Hook's music stops the process from taking its full form, and Order is finally defeated. This one's more lighthearted and dips more into the lore between Pearl and Marina. It's blatantly obvious these two are a couple, and it's so incredibly wholesome to see, especially when we get Marina's heartfelt extras like background art primarily featuring Pearl and musical tracks and upgrades for the Pearl drone inspired by aspects of her personality. And while the premise of threatening all of reality is way larger in scope than anything we've seen before in the Splatoon series, it still keeps the energy close to home and doesn't lose its identity. Overall, both the main storyline and the side order DLC have storylines that tie in really nicely to the lore, and as a fan, I absolutely eat that shit up. But I must admit, this isn't my favorite game because of the story. As usual, a decent story is nice, but if the controls are ass, then we have a problem. And while the controls aren't bad, they are easily the most alienating thing about the franchise, even though I personally love them. Splatoon is a movement shooter, which means instead of choosing between iconic characters with specific personalities, strengths, and weaknesses, you pretty much have a blank slate that changes based upon your customization and weapon choice, generally themed around making movement feel more fluid and impactful. In gameplay, you jump with the B button, you use the left stick to move, you shoot your main weapon with the right trigger, and you can adjust your aim with the right stick. So far, so good. Alright, time to rip off the band-aid. Splatoon is perhaps the most different movement shooter out there, and the aim is part of the reason. First thing that newcomers will notice is that the motion controls are turned on by default. This is the most jarring thing for people to get a grasp on. This will feel foreign, and for some people, absolutely disgusting. Okay, so you can turn the motion controls off. It's a fine substitute, but you will notice that there is a complete lack of aim assist. That's right, Splatoon does not have any aim assist. For some of you who watch professionals play this game, that seems straight up false. Some people just seem to effortlessly hit their shots no matter what position they're in or stress level they have. And put simply, that is just straight up skill. This is an intentional design choice to omit aim assist, and the reason being is the philosophy of the game. Splatoon's way of easing players into the game is to emphasize that killing is not a mandatory part of the experience. You don't need to have good aim to contribute greatly to winning matches, at least not in the beginning. The name of the game is area control. Put simply, having as much of the map covered in your color ink will give you greater area control. In other words, you want to paint more to be more effective. Once you get a grasp of that, you'll start naturally taking more fights against opponents, and as you get better, you'll feel how your aim improves slowly but surely. Splatoon has two methods of movement, running and swimming. Running, we've already covered. Swimming can be activated by holding the left trigger. When submerged in your ink, your movement speed almost doubles, and you can swim up inkable walls and through netting and grates. Swimming is also the way that you heal yourself from damage, although it takes about a full second before you can start recovering health. You might notice that there is no health bar. Most of the time, all you really need to know is that most weapons can kill you in 4 shots or less. Some things do small damage over time, while some more directly try to take you out head on. The edges of the screen become more claustrophobic to give a sense of danger when your health is lower. I can understand if this looks confusing, but in gameplay, it's more practical than you might think, and subliminally keeps your mind off of paying attention to your exact health. Swimming also passively refills your ink tank, which is your ammunition. When you have more of the map covered in your color, it makes moving from point A to point B much easier. Alright, cool. How does this play into aim? Well, Splatoon wants newcomers to be well experienced in map control discipline more than aim discipline. Yes, kills will become important later because you can disadvantage your enemies, but the basics lie at these fundamentals. You can win many of your early games from contributing only the ability to paint. You, as a newcomer with probably not so good aim, can make a huge difference by shooting the ground in front of you. Obviously, you're not climbing any major ranks with this method alone, but this introduces you to what you can and cannot get away with. There are an abundance of weapons that you will later unlock that focus more on either aiming or painting, whichever route you decide to choose. If you don't mind contributing more to painting the ground so your teammates have somewhere to move, then the stick controls will be a little more forgiving to you. But if you need high twitch sensitivity and mouse-like aim to secure kills, then motion controls would be a wise thing to learn. Don't get me wrong, you certainly can ascend the ranks with stick controls, and there are even some well-accomplished players in the top ranks who still use stick controls, but there are some maneuvers that are simply not possible at their greatest speed without learning motion controls. And even though there are measures to make motion controls easier to grasp, like the sensitivity adjusters or the Y button, which recenters the camera angle if things go a little haywire, this is the most difficult thing to grasp in the early days. This will alienate a good 80% of players off rip, but when you do learn how to play this way, most of that 80% never turn back. It's not a control scheme for everyone, but it does come with advantages. Having grown up myself with the Wii as my first home console, I was thoroughly versed in the intricacies of motion controls. Or at least it was just the most intuitive thing for me anyways, so learning on the Wii U and the Switch was no big deal for me. But moving from literally every other console shooter to this will feel fundamentally different. Moving on, every weapon comes with a predetermined sub-weapon and special weapon. Sub-weapons are your utility weapons, which, translated to normal shooter terms, are your bombs, sticky bombs, location sensors, and literal barriers. Some of these are intended for straight-up offense, while some are more useful for just utility. An important note, this is not a sidearm. You don't get an extra pistol or dagger in your back pocket for up-close situations. These are just weapons that serve a secondary purpose to your main weapon. Your special weapon is like an ultimate. In Splatoon, you'll find that this meter sometimes fills automatically. More often than not, this meter is dependent on how much of the ground you cover in your ink, and covering over your enemy's ink grants you more charge. These serve to be specialized weapons or transformations that can turn the tide of battles. Sometimes they're as simple as whipping out a bazooka to blast them from afar, or whipping out a giant vacuum to suck up enemy ink and then turn it against them in a similar bazooka-like blast. But sometimes they can be transforming into the unstoppable Kraken and tearing up the way in front of you, or briefly becoming a Super Saiyan, charging up a spirit bomb to blast away the opposition. These are going to be the bread and butter of understanding your weapon and playstyle, and Splatoon has an abundance of predetermined weapon kits that unlock the more you play. The X button opens up your in-game map, which can be used to see how much of the map is covered in your and enemy ink. Splatoon also has a mid-match fast travel feature where you can super jump from anywhere in the map to your teammates or to these squid beacons, which are a type of sub-weapon that players with certain weapon kits can place down. The super jump process does take some time to start up, and you are vulnerable while in the startup animation. Also be mindful that unless you have a certain in-game ability, enemies can see where you are trying to jump to, so use the map intelligently to judge if it's a good idea to jump, or just make the long trek back to the middle of the map. It's one of my favorite unique aspects about the game because every other shooter has the infamous problem of the walk of shame. The super jump keeps the gameplay fast and frantic while adding a risk-reward factor for those daring enough to use it. The only other buttons that are put to use are your very limited communication options on the D-pad. Up simply signals your comrades to gather to your location, while down is a simple celebratory booyah that you can happily gesture after getting 4 kills in a row. It's also customary for players to booyah at the beginning of the match for good luck. It's basically good luck have fun, but only for your teammates. These options are extremely limited, as you can imagine. Us fans have been waiting for Nintendo to give more meaningful updates to the D-pad so team plays and strategies can more easily be worked around. We know there are certain aspects that would just break the game, like if they added a ping system, it would invalidate half of the abilities and sub-weapons in the game, but at least the ability to signal when your special is ready to use or something like that would be useful. There are other indicators for that sort of thing, but they often go unnoticed because of their placement on the screen. The only other tactical thing of note is the newly added Flow Aura, which is a passive mechanic that gives you a boost to your movement speed and painting power the more kills you can chain together in quick succession. Weapons, abilities, positioning. What's the game like on that front? All weapons come in predetermined weapon kits, which means while there are a lot of unique combinations, there is no way to freely change what sub-weapon or special you have at will. You have to take what's given to you, and both your main weapon and sub-weapon draw from the same ammunition source, your ink tank. Now, that sounds like it sucks, but given how this game works, some combinations would be outright unfair to play against if left unregulated. The map sizes and shapes are often small and exposed, especially by comparison to other movement shooters like the Finals and Splitgate 2. In some instances, certain weapons can dominate in range on some areas of the map, so if they had complete freedom to throw whatever they wanted into the mix, predicting what their weapon can and cannot do would be a nightmare mid-match. This is a smart way to give freedom while regulating variables, and updates are issued regularly to fix bugs, glitches, and overall broken mechanics. Main weapons range from short, middle, and long-range automatic guns and semi-automatic burst shotguns to sniper rifles, miniguns, Gatling guns, bows and arrows, umbrella shotguns, swords, hand cannons, dual pistols, giant paint rollers, buckets, and giant paint brushes. I'm not going to go over all of them, but each play specific roles in the battlefield. In Splatoon, these weapons are typically sorted into positions in gameplay, and while there is no official regulation on how you have to play these weapons, these are the general recommendations from the community. Your front runners are typically going to consist of weapons that move relatively quickly, both in and out of their ink. This category is colloquially known as the Slayers. Slayers want to either deal high damage with fewer shots, or deal so many low damage shots in a short amount of time that their opponent can't react. We typically put the swords, short and mid-range shooters, hand cannons, and buckets into this category. The position behind the Slayers is your support. These weapons like to either help paint the ground for mobility or assist with kills using off angles from the side. This is where your long-range shooters, ink brushes, miniguns, and paint rollers will be most effective. They don't go looking for a fight, but should be able to assist the Slayers, hence the name support. The backline consists of all the weapons with long range and high damage. This position is called the anchor, because their presence can dominate control over certain areas, and they often tend not to move around when settled. This position is reserved for the heavier weapons, like the snipers, Gatling guns, and bows. They specialize in securing kills from far away or providing supportive suppressive fire from the other side of the map. Something I want you to keep in mind is that Splatoon has no hit scan weapons, which means there are no weapons that apply damage as soon as you hit the button to shoot. All weapons have bullets that take time to travel in the air, yes, even including the snipers. This is how the game stays balanced. If you really want to get to the higher levels, knowing how fast your weapon's bullets or ink splotches travel in the air becomes pretty important, but isn't really necessary for casual play. The weapon kits generally revolve around the class they are intended to be in. For example, Slayer weapons are more likely to end up with grenades or other bombs for continuing their forward march. Supportive weapons are more likely to end up with utility, like those squid beacons for super jumping, or sprinklers that can paint on your behalf. And anchor weapons usually get a hybrid. Some will get bombs to use as get-off-me tools against flankers and aggressors, while some may get utility sub-weapons for revealing enemy location or walls to sit behind to defend their lack of mobility. Typically, the specials also reflect that same sentiment, although sometimes we see weapons break that pattern. Importantly, there are also hybrid weapons that can combine some elements to make their own unique playstyles, so try to dip your toes into as many different weapons as you can. Some of their unique quirks can change the flow of battles. Abilities are one of the defining features of the Splatoon franchise. Your player character's clothes are completely customizable, and you can even save certain clothing combinations to Splatoon amiibos if you have them. These clothes, specifically the shirts, headwear, and shoes, have what are called ability slots. As you play, your clothing will automatically unlock these ability slots. All clothing comes with a main ability already predetermined. This main ability is what gives you the biggest edge in battle and is worth the weight of 3 of the smaller ability slots. For example, you could either try to get 3 of the same small abilities or just use a piece of gear that already has what you're looking for as its main ability. These smaller abilities unlock semi-randomly. There is a chart online that reveals that the clothing brand you choose will usually have a bias and a non-bias for particular abilities. We call these ability chunks. When you play the game enough, you can use these ability chunks to vastly change aspects of the game in your favor. There are ability chunks that allow you to swim in your ink faster or run on the ground faster. Some allow you to respawn faster, while some hide your super jump landing spot. Some abilities even allow you to see enemies through walls if you shot them but couldn't secure the kill. These can get to be quite involved and work with your playstyle. For example, Retoro here is a battle tactician and a slayer. She likes to be in the front line and deal high damage, preferably before the enemy has the time to react. Basically, she likes for battles to end before they even begin. Her most prominent 2 abilities are Opening Gambit and Respawn Punisher, a deadly combination. Opening Gambit boosts all of her movement speed and ammo reload time for the first 30 seconds of the battle, and that timer can be increased the more kills she can secure in quick succession. Respawn Punisher increases the time it takes for enemies she kills to respawn back to the battlefield, and even takes away how much of their special gauge they can respawn with, severely limiting their ability to make an easy comeback. The drawback is that this also applies to her. If she can secure the kill she needs in the beginning of the round, games can end in no joke like 30 seconds. She also has some other useful utility stuff like the ink saver for her main weapon, which basically means her ink tank can hold more ammo in her main gun, but not for her sub-weapon. She also has the ability Intensify Action, which basically makes it so her accuracy is tighter when she's airborne, which is extremely useful in this game because jumping is a common tactic for making yourself harder to hit. These stats wouldn't be so good on just any old weapon, which is why she chooses the .52 Gal Deco, which is a short-ranged shooter that supplies scarily high damage. If she lands 2 direct shots, that's a kill. The gun's fire rate balances these stats, so the gun shoots at a moderate rate to compensate. Combined with the sub-weapon, the curling bomb that paints in a line, giving her a direct trail to follow straight into the enemy front lines, and a special that gives her a wall that impairs the enemy's vision, and she has a formula that she considers reliable. When you combine all these elements together, the system can easily become complex and custom to your preferred method of play. And if you earn enough ability chunks through playing, you can even outright swap the main ability chunk for whatever gear you want. This was a big problem in previous games. Usually the ability chunks people wanted were tied to gear that did not look fashionable in the slightest. You'd see top players wearing something truly outrageous like a backwards cap, ghillie suit, and some penny loafers, and that was the meta-defining gear set. Having addressed this concern, players can now look fresher and fight better. So now the question comes up, all of this is really necessary to shoot the ground better? Well, yes and no. Splatoon actually has 6 online multiplayer modes. Those weapon combinations, ability chunks, and positioning knowledge is only useful for 5 of those. As mentioned before, the game eases you into basic gameplay using Turf War, where the name of the game is legitimately to paint more of the ground than your opponent. It's the closest thing this game has to Team Deathmatch, although be aware that you can completely dominate in kills and still get outpainted. The other 4 are the ranked matches, and like every other multiplayer shooter, there is a ranking system. Upon reaching level 10, Splatoon presents to you their ranked modes as well as their ranking system. Everyone starts in rank C- and works their way up from there, to rank C, then C+, then B-, then B, then B+, and so on and so forth. After rank A+, you move up to rank S, and then when you get to S+, the game will allow you a secondary option to participate in rank X, which is usually a division of the top players. I do want to emphasize that rank X is its own division and is separated from rank S+, which means if you want to maintain the ability to play S+, after the end of each season, you do need to participate in S+ games as well. Progressing enough in rank X can potentially let you break into the top 500, the legitimate highest ranks in the game. That's cool. How does it work? Speaking personally, this is the best ranking system I've seen in a multiplayer ranked game, period. Ranked modes start you with a default amount of points. I'm going to use my own rank for example. S+ gives you a default of 300 points. Now you have 2 options. You can play ranked battles in a series or in solos. If you choose series, the system takes away 180 of those points, and your objective is to win 5 games before losing 3. This can be in any order. For example, you can win 4 games, but if your last 3 games are losses, then that's the end of your run. Or you can win 2 games, lose 2 games, and win 3 games, and that would be considered successful. For each game in a series, you win back a few points, which get tallied up at the end of the series. Usually, if you win 3 games and lose 3 games, you are at least breaking even on those 180 points it took from you. A minor thing to note is that your in-game performance also adds a few extra bonus points to your earnings. Of course, the aim is to keep building up more points until you reach the threshold for your rank, and then you can rank up. For S+, you can keep adding levels to your S+, starting at S+1, then S+2, and so on and so forth. The highest S+ rank that can be achieved is S+50. Solo battles do not take points away from you at the beginning. Instead, you earn or lose points 1 game at a time, albeit they are a fixed amount. In S+, you earn 8 points for winning and lose 4 points for losing, and your performance sometimes doesn't even contribute to any bonus points. It's technically slower to rank up here than in series, but the point ratios are more consistent. It penalizes you less for losing streaks, but also rewards you less for winning streaks. Whereas in series, it penalizes you more for losing streaks, but rewards you more for winning streaks. The awesome part is control is given to the player for this decision. If you go on such a losing streak that your points go into the negatives, the game gives you until the end of a season, which typically lasts 3 months, to try to redeem yourself. If you make no progress or if your points fall back down into the negatives, then at the end of the season you get D-ranked down by 1. So those who could not break into S+1 and so on get D-ranked back down to S. It's an excellent system that's forgiving where it needs to be and equally strict on what you can and cannot do. In Rank X, things are a little different. Rank X is designed for the best of the best, the sweatiest of the sweats. Your X rank is determined by your X power, a different number system that basically boasts how strong you as an individual player are. Rank X functions like series matches, where your X power is affected after either winning 3 games or losing 3 games. This number determines the kind of opponents you will face for each series. Those of you that really excel can get put into top 500 lobbies, and they even give you a nice shiny banner over your head too. Okay, enough about that. What even are the ranked modes? They're pretty simple, and fans of Overwatch or Marvel Rivals will relate to them. The most popular ranked mode is Splat Zones, which is essentially King of the Hill, or Control. In the center of the stage is a zone that you have to fight for control over. You can gain control by painting it and holding it in your color for longer than your opponent. The timer at the top of the screen counts down until it reaches 0. The losing team can put this into overtime by gaining control when the match timer has gone to 0, and the winning team can end overtime by simply recapturing the zone. One nuance is that there is a comeback system. If the losing team interrupts and captures the zone from the winning team, an additional amount of time gets added to the winning team, making them have to wait longer before they can win. This penalty is applied based on the progress of each team, so things don't feel disproportionate, and these additional seconds are really just half seconds, meaning they count down quicker. The second ranked mode is Tower Control. I've seen people compare this to modes in other games, like an attacking team pushing a payload while a defender is trying to stop them. In actuality, for my Overwatch fans, this is the same as Push. There's a central tower that teammates need to stand on in order for it to move. The tower then automatically moves towards the opponent's base, which puts the winning team in more and more danger the closer they are to winning. Tower control is particularly interesting because you have to either be standing on or submerged in ink on the top of the tower for it to move. Overtime can be initiated when the losing team gets control over the tower when the match timer reaches 0, and it can be ended if the winning team reclaims the tower. The third ranked mode is Rainmaker. It's similar to Tower Control in a sense that you're steadily moving towards the enemy base and you have to pass by mandatory checkpoints, but there are some differences. The Rainmaker itself is a super weapon that spawns in the middle of the stage and upon equipping it, restricts you from using your main, sub, and special weapons and makes you really slow because the thing is so damn heavy, but instead gives you an ultra powerful explosion of death. Before equipping it though, you have to break its protective barrier. It can be broken by shooting it, but the other team can shoot back. Some weapons are better at breaking barriers than others, so even if your weapon shoots fast, it may not necessarily pack the punch needed to break the barrier easily. Once broken though, you can quickly scramble to get a hold of it. Because of your obvious impairments, your teammates should try to escort you to the checkpoints and then to the final ending pedestal on the other side of the map. When the person holding the Rainmaker is killed, the Rainmaker drops to the ground and the shield reforms for you to break it again. Some cheeky tactics come from this, including the ability to reset the Rainmaker to the center of the stage, to buy time, or reset the opposing team's progress. You can do this by equipping the Rainmaker and then jumping off the stage, killing you in the process. You might think some players will try to play the cheap game and hold on to it on their side of the map once they start winning, but the Rainmaker penalizes players for moving towards their own home base using this very obvious timer that starts counting down faster and faster the more you try to cheat the system. On top of that, if held for too long, the person holding the Rainmaker explodes and it is either reset to the center, in the case of cheap players on the other side of the map, or it falls to the ground where you stand if you're winning. This blast from taking too long or expending the time can kill your own teammates, so think twice about playing cheap. Overtime initiates when the losing team has control over the Rainmaker when the timer reaches 0, and can be ended if the player holding the Rainmaker gets killed by the winning team, or they forfeit and jump off the map with the Rainmaker, resetting it. The fourth and final ranked mode is Clam Blitz, and it's completely unique in concept to Splatoon. Littered around the map are these little golden clams. On each side of the map are these clam baskets. You basically want to score more clams in the opponent's basket, just like basketball. Problem is, these clams are too weak to break the barrier around the basket. They just bounce right off. What you need to do is collect 8 of these clams, and when you do, they'll combine into a power clam. This power clam packs enough punch to break the barrier around the basket, and once broken, the basket becomes exposed, and normal smaller clams can be used to score smaller amounts of points. You can also build up power clams in this time, which can be thrown for big points. After enough time, the basket's barrier will reset, but as a comeback mechanic, will spawn a power clam for the losing team. We call this a pity power clam, or just pity clam. Overtime is initiated if the losing team has a power clam on the field, and can be ended if the winning team scores before the losers can. The losers only get one chance to make a final push, but if the power clam despawns, then the game is over automatically. If there are multiple power clams on the field for the losing team, then the game will prioritize the power clam that was spawned the earliest, and even if you make more, when that original one despawns, it's game over. This combo of modes creates an incredibly fun game loop and keeps players engaged and interested. Only problem is that all maps are on a random rotation for 2 hours, and only 2 maps are in rotation at a time. Granted, they are different from mode to mode. Turf Wars 2 maps are going to be different from ranked series maps and from solo maps, and then the ranked series modes are different from the solo ranked modes. But even still, if you wanted to play Splat Zones, for example, on a specific map, there is no voting system or any way to influence what maps are going to get chosen. Further still, because of the way this game is organized, you can't change your loadout mid-game if you hastily selected a weapon and gear that works better on another map or mode. Even within the 2 presented maps, they are also random. I've legitimately gone an entire rotation having played on the exact same map before, and sometimes it can get annoying if I would really rather play on the other map in rotation. Despite those minor quibbles, most of the other complaints lie within other different kinds of fundamentals of the game, which I'll go into momentarily. I still have to talk about the final multiplayer mode. The 6th multiplayer game mode is called Salmon Run, and for those uninitiated, is Splatoon's version of Call of Duty's Zombies mode, except replace the rotting flesh with hillbilly salmon. These are the Salmonids, and their main goal in life as of Splatoon 2 and Splatoon 3 is to take over the surface world and continue laying eggs to keep growing their population. These guys are some few hundred years too late in their evolution to claim the already vastly populated surface world, and have only recently gained the ability to breathe on air and produce sludge-like ink like other inkfish. Except these fuckers are actually amphibious. You and your platoon's goal is to kill them to keep them from overpopulating the surface world, using randomized weapons given to you at the beginning of each round, and then a basic grenade, and then a random special that you have for the entire duration of the game and can only use 2 times. Okay, sounds simple so far. What separates this from COD Zombies are the boss salmonids. Boss salmonids are the real tinkerers of the salmonid species. They jerry-rig rinky-dink and surprisingly effective machinations that give them a fighting chance against the superior inkfish weaponry. Obviously, these guys don't have the budget to equip their entire armed forces with guns, but the boss salmonids give themselves extraordinary advantages like infinite range death lasers or armored go-karts, even an impenetrable armor that can allow them to throw out gigantic bombs. These boss salmonids are unique in that they require a specific method to defeat them. Simply shooting at them won't work all the time. Sometimes you gotta throw a bomb into a specific area to backfire their main attack, or sometimes it's just as simple as shooting at the only available weak spot. These guys show up alongside their normal salmonid brethren and do their best to take you down. Only caveat is that most of the time they can only target one of you at a time, so just stay vigilant. Upon defeating Boss Eminid, you'll notice these golden eggs drop from them. These golden eggs hold immense power and are quite valuable, so it's in your best interest to return as many of these golden eggs to the centralized egg basket to fulfill your quota. Really, that's it. Defeat Boss Eminids and sink eggs. When a teammate dies, it's up to you to revive them by simply shooting them. Dead teammates can still move around a bit in these lifesavers to maybe get a little closer to their teammates to make reviving easier, but they can't really do much else. Bombs and specials can also revive teammates, so the process is a little easier to get the team back and moving if, say, 3 of the 4 of you have perished. New to Splatoon 3 are the inclusion of King Salmonids, Boss Salmonids on steroids in the form of Kohozuna, Salmon Godzilla, Ouroboros, Salmon Chinese Dragon, and Megalodontia, Jaws. The more games you complete, the angrier these King Salmonid get, eventually culminating in their arrival, which, instead of sinking golden eggs into the basket, you actually gain a golden egg launcher and can yeet their unborn children right back into them for massive damage. As cold-hearted as Mr. Grizz is, even he recognizes that this is a life-or-death situation and just needs you to survive. Another new addition to this mode in Splatoon 3 is the Big Run event, where Salmonids are so copious that they literally invade normal stages and wreak havoc on them instead of the normal Salmonid spawning grounds. And when the King Salmonids come, they sometimes will just decide to all show up at once, culminating in the most chaotic Salmon Run rounds ever. So chaotic that you can even get the King Salmonids to attack one another, including some of their own normal Salmonids and Boss Salmonids. Seriously, this shit gets to be insane. And like ranked modes, Salmon Run also has a ranking system, wherein the more you win, the higher title you get, starting as a part-timer, and then evolving into a professional or executive. And why would you put yourself through this until you rank up? Money. And sometimes specific gear. Also, for defeating King Salmonids, you get special currencies to use at Grisco's shop for specific rewards, although the prices for some of this stuff is way up there, and sometimes you may find you'll be spending a lot more time than you would otherwise want to, earning the right currencies for everything. These 6 modes define the overall experience of Splatoon 3, and they each have amazing things to talk about. Hell, there's even an entire other side mode that I didn't talk about. Table Turf Battles, which in the lore are a card game, and in gameplay, these cards function like Blockus, if you've ever played. Basically, 2 players take turns using various cards they earn through these season passes, given to you every 3 months. These cards have certain values and certain shapes or configurations, and you simply have to place them down on the board next to your own color and try to paint more of the board than your opponent. As long as the next piece you place is next to your own color and it can fit within the stage boundaries, you can place it down and even override some of your opponent's pieces. It's not very complex, but can serve as a neat extra in case normal inking and sinking gets too repetitive. I could talk at length about how I appreciate the pace of the game and the weapon diversity, as well as the intricacies of movement and the revolutionary implementation of optimized motion controls, but I think you all get the picture with that, considering this is my favorite game of all time as of 2026. But that doesn't mean there aren't some very glaring issues. Firstly, and most importantly, content consistency. The Splatoon series has an unfortunate reputation of splurging all of its content within the first few years of its lifespan, leaving its dry years really dry, whereas other popular shooters like it, a la Overwatch and Marvel Rivals, have the distinct ability to maintain player retention for multiple years to come. Splatoon 3 did make an attempt to deviate from the shortcomings of its predecessors, and for the most part it was successful, but after some time the veil kind of fell off. Splatoon implemented a season system, much like the free-to-play games mentioned before. Only difference is that Splatoon 3 is a full-priced game, so you don't have to pay for a new season's season pass. It's effectively an automatic update. These seasonal updates give you a season pass full of cosmetics for your character and your locker in the training room, and not much more than that. Nintendo is really wary about adding weapon cosmetics like stickers and full reskins, as it can be difficult for them to be differentiated mid-game, which in some ways I can understand, but in others, I think the distinct art style of this game makes main weapons relatively easy to understand either way. Major balance changes and patch notes come out every season as well, and these are usually meta-defining, which can make gameplay drastically different from last season. Default implementations like new weapons or the release of new specials and sub-weapons can also shift the tides quite a bit as well, both good and bad. These major balance changes are how we get new dynamic movement options for weapons that had crazy limitations before, but also how we get weapons with no impact suddenly becoming requirements for any team composition to exist. And unfortunately, some of these changes have even permeated the casual space as well, which I think is a problem, particularly when it comes to affecting a weapon's power. Nintendo really wanted to make Splatoon 3 all about buffing underpowered weapons instead of nerfing overpowered ones, and while they eventually did start giving out nerfs to overpowered weapons, they did so infrequently that certain seasons could feel the difference in impact. I also have a problem with the Season Pass method as a whole, because quite a lot of the gear they threw in here used to exist in Splatoon 2, and they just took their sweet ass time getting it to us. Unfortunately, if you don't complete the Season Pass, all the items present get loaded into the lottery machine in the training room, and just like in real life, costs a pretty penny to play the lotto. It's nothing personal, just that these feel like unnecessary additions to the game. They go to so much effort to give the Season Pass a theme, even giving each season a name, but seeing that in gameplay is almost absent. Maps don't get any seasonal updates or changes aside from occasionally permanent layout changes, and even the hub world doesn't change either. The only time things change are for Splatfests. Splatfests are weekend-long celebration events, where you vote on a team of your choosing and then battle one another in online games. Salmon Run doesn't count. For Splatoon 3, you get 3 choices. For example, what kind of chocolate do you like? Milk chocolate, dark chocolate, or white chocolate? After choosing, they give you a Splatfest t-shirt, replacing whatever shirt or jacket you were wearing for the duration of the event, and then you compete in turf war matches only. On the final day of the event, they give you the option to compete in tricolor turf wars, wherein 2 attacking teams composed of 2 players each try to overpaint a defending team of 4 players. The catch is that these attackers spawn on off angles on the map and have to try to reach the middle of the map and obtain a giant sprinkler, which passively helps to paint their own spawn. Thing is, it takes a while to get that mega sprinkler to work, so you're stuck in place and completely vulnerable every time you make an attempt. The more attempts you make, though, the faster you can get the thing to load up, and eventually you claim it. If your team wins the entire Splatfest, you're rewarded with Super Sea Snails, which you can give to Merch or Spike, 2 urchins who love eating them, and can use their power to give you more ability slots for your gear, or substitute using money to replace your abilities on a certain piece of gear. These become useful if you want to optimize your gear sets. Now, during Splatfests, the theme of the stages switches to nighttime, and sometimes some stages gain extra elements that fit the theme of the time of year. The hub worlds also undergo massive changes too, with giant light shows, performances from all of the idols of the Splatoon world, and new Splatfest music. It legitimately becomes a festival, but on the flip side, they only last for 3 days, from Friday to Sunday, leaving the rest of the season a little shallow. It's already confirmed that the condition of Earth is so drastically changed that the inhabitants of the surface are permanently stuck in summer weather. Snow very rarely appears on the surface, so it's understandable that we wouldn't really see snow on the ground or anything like that, but we don't even hardly see decorations either. I say this because at a certain level, it's kinda expected that some maps change up their look for the holidays. It's very clear the Inkfish celebrate holidays much like we do, so it's hard to believe that, as mischievous and young as these characters are, that they wouldn't at least decorate for more than 3 days. Point being, aesthetics are a little weak for a seasonal-based game. All of these content-related problems I have are only further exacerbated by the time we're in now. Every season nowadays is a rehash season, meaning the seasonal passes are the same as before for veteran players. The only crazy change we got was earlier in January, where they added the small health bars visible to players after being hit, and the flow aura state that I mentioned at the beginning of the gameplay section. Another problem I have is with the map layout. Splatoon 3 is the most streamlined Splatoon has ever felt, and in some ways that's amazing, but in others, it's incredibly uncreative. Fans have noticed that there are elements in the story mode that could make for greater multiplayer map gimmicks, like the grind rails, boosters, and geysers. Nintendo has consistently been reluctant to include such things in their multiplayer maps, which, by this point in the series, is really not looking great. It wouldn't be as big of an issue if the maps were better designed. A lot And I do mean a lot of these maps feel like straight hallways as opposed to intricate obstacle courses, which puts an unfair bias towards snipers and long-range Gatling guns. For quite a while, this map design was what allowed pesky weapons like these to hold an advantage. There were other maps, but these other maps were either small or predictable. It seems like map sizes shrunk in favor of a more streamlined game, which, yes, at times feels faster, but really just makes it easier to die. Worse still, Nintendo was adamant about reducing the amount of inkable walls. Now I get it, there was a huge epidemic in the previous 2 Splatoon games wherein newer players would spend an unnecessary amount of time painting the walls, believing they would contribute to the overall score in Turf War, which they do not. Walls that were inkable exist for movement and hiding only, and so to enforce that, Nintendo just said, fuck it, we'll just remove them. Problem is that quite a lot of interesting tactics involving surprise attacks got completely removed too. Sure, they added more movement options to compensate, but there's really no replacing inventive thinking. I also take issues with the whole ability chunk system, more specifically obtaining them. Using them most of the time is self-explanatory, they just attach to your already existing moveset, so you don't even really have to think about it. But in order to obtain certain abilities, you probably should do a little bit of research beforehand, because this is a really grindy system that does not favor the uninformed. You could, as a new player, spend hours, days, even weeks gaining and then emptying your gear just to find out that the ability you're looking for doesn't even natively come to the brand of clothing you're wearing. And that can and will turn some people away who are just wanting to optimize their playing experience. What's worse is that during Splatfests, because they give you a new shirt, they take away whatever shirt you were wearing and restart your grind. Speaking on that, I really wish Splatfest t-shirts had more going for them. When you do pick a team, they get a custom design to represent what team you're on, and also faintly glow in the dark alongside your wristband. It would be awesome to see Nintendo give out souvenir Splatfest t-shirts after the Splatfest is over to commemorate you and show off your attendance. The fact that they just kind of disappear means the only proof you have of being there is whatever videos you record on your Switch. Not really a deal breaker, just something that I think could have been implemented by now. The only other main critique I have is about Nintendo's netcode. For those unfamiliar, the netcode of the Nintendo Switch, specifically how it's implemented in Splatoon 2 and 3, is quite low. Netcode, specifically netcode refresh rate, basically refers to how many times each console on the internet sends and receives a signal between other consoles playing in the same game. You want all systems in the same match to send out information not only regularly, but quickly. We're talking multiple times per second, ideally 60 refreshes per second. One refresh per frame of gameplay. Reason being is because in a game filled with actual projectile bullets, which you have to observe traveling through the air, it's extremely important to know where to position yourself. The Wii U handled this well. Any differences you saw in-game were instant feedback, so you could make micro adjustments in positioning. The Nintendo Switch's netcode refresh rate is less than half of the Wii U's, at 16 refreshes per second. Not only is this considerably low for shooters, this is low in general. This can sometimes make bullets traveling through the air give you inconsistent feedback about where they're going and how fast and how far they're traveling. This is coupled with another similar issue with Splatoon specifically, the fact that Nintendo refuses to host dedicated servers for the 8 players to fight in, and instead relies on how good your connection is versus another player. Using a server would mean the match averages to the best internet connections in the lobby, so even if your internet is bad, you can piggyback off of someone else's more decent connection, and your location in space is relative to how other people see you. Since the game is relying on each individual player's internet connection, then what you see as a laggy player is completely different to what someone else sees on the receiving end. You could be moving completely fine and shooting targets no problem, while everyone else sees you teleporting around the map and bullets spewing out of your gun and painting the ground in chunks instead of as a consistent flow. Basically, you look choppy moving around and shooting. Both of these aspects are directly within Nintendo's control, and their refusal to upgrade how the Switch handles these situations can sometimes make certain games damn near unplayable. But, you know, that's all fine and dandy. It's not like any of these problems are absolute deal breakers, and you do get the opportunity to play the game for $60, right? Yes, it's true. I'm not going to jump scare you with an $80 price tag, at least not for the base game. The thing is, free-to-play games are actually more accessible than paying for a full game nowadays. A very valid critique I've heard amongst my friend group and online is that while $60 isn't an unfair price for the whole package, they would rather spend a much lesser sum of money to play only the modes they feel like playing. The economy is in such a bad state, in particularly America, that a lot of times people don't have the ability to just casually drop $60 all at once. That's less appealing when we factor in the story mode, which a lot of players have no interest in and would rather just watch someone else play on YouTube. Salmon Run isn't the most appealing to people either. Some folks just prefer the main 5 multiplayer modes, and that's all they'll play. And the biggest part of this is if they're going to have to get used to a new method of playing the game, completely different than any other shooters, it's not convincing in the slightest to have to drop a significant portion of the paycheck to do so. This is before factoring in the DLC side order, which adds an additional $20, making the full package $80. And while I personally disagree with this position and would much rather drop the full $80, I also understand that I am the minority amongst other gamers who aren't already sold on Splatoon as a concept. Convincing someone to try something completely new that forces them to unlearn their already established method of playing other similar games and then making them pay so much more to try it out isn't really in the cards for some people. Maybe if the state of the economy was better, people would be more willing to, but as it stands, there's a reason free-to-play is favored given the current state of affairs. All of that culminates into the final part of the video, and as usual, let's review. Splatoon 3 is a generally fun third-person shooter with multiple elements of complexity, leading to a healthy amount of differentiation from literally every other shooter. Instead of focusing on draining real-world money for cosmetics, the entire package is unlocked from the beginning, including the ability to earn all cosmetics and weapons through playing the game more and more. Control is tight and responsive, however, the control scheme for many is largely inaccessible, simply due to the heavily suggested use of motion controls, even if they can be turned off. The amount of customization for your character is enormous, allowing for more personal expression instead of trying to find something with pre-made characters. The game's method of leveling you up and preparing you through a tutorial, early levels of online play, and the story mode are very welcome additions in today's day and age, considering story-based shooters seldom become successful. The story mode itself, while a bit goofy, dives into some of the lore of the inkfish and cephalopods of the time. It does stray a bit from the usual Splatoon story motifs, but stays relatively familiar to home territory. On that topic, the levels in the story mode are thoughtfully planned out to give new players a well-rounded experience, with the opportunity to learn more advanced techniques and maneuvers, while still offering fair levels of challenge for veterans of the series and answering some questions regarding the lore. The DLC story, while short, is an excellent level of differentiation from the normal story mode and focuses on different aspects and more difficult challenges, and the roguelike leveling system is genuinely distinct and refreshing. However, the DLC does cost 20 extra real-world dollars, which some may find to be a little much if they're not sold on Splatoon as a concept. Then again, it's not required to understand the main story any better, it is simply more lore for other characters of the franchise. 100%ing the story does add some cool extras like weapon skins and even an extra hard continuous level for completionists, which is a nice touch. The game offers 6 independent online multiplayer modes and an additional side mode in Table Turf, and each mode offers its own level of uniqueness compared to other mainline shooters. The weapons used to participate come with their own levels of complexity without being outlandish to understand, and the fact that there are no complex button combinations or extra abilities like in hero shooters can make these weapons feel more accessible. Even though there is no aim assist, Splatoon does a good job at introducing the player to the main mechanic of painting the ground to provide value to the team, allowing even the most newbie of noobs to find their positions and weapons of choice to be as effective as possible. The concept of a main weapon, sub-weapon, and special that functions similarly in concept to abilities and ultimates in other shooters allows more people to easily understand what each button does. However, weapons being restricted to specialized fixed kits can limit creativity and cause some weapon kits and team compositions to feel over or underpowered, and the lack of ability to switch to another mid-match can turn some people away as they may feel stuck in an unfortunate game. The rank system is genuinely the most intelligent ranking system in any modern shooter. It's designed to not make the player feel as they are failing, even if they're losing points. The game emphasizes that there's always the ability to make a comeback, even if it may take a while, and allowing an entire season to pass to give the player time to regain or retain their rank allots players the freedom to set the game down without feeling as though they're being usurped by others. Season passes are an automatic addition to every player that owns the game and cannot be fast-tracked by purchasing levels. For some, this is great because it never feels like an unfair pay to win, even if all aspects of the passes are purely cosmetic. But for others who don't have the time, they can feel as though it takes an unreasonable amount of time to complete each season pass, and they may lose the opportunity to reach that one cosmetic at the end of the pass that they were looking for. The map designs are alright. They are easily the most streamlined they've ever been in the Splatoon series, and while some maps that were added more recently have introduced more branching pathways to actually feel like battlegrounds, a healthy amount of them are pretty linear hallways or Tetris pieces that clearly favor some weapons over others, leading to a trending meta involving longer ranged weapons. The concept of the mobility in Splatoon across the whole franchise, meaning swimming to recover ammunition, heal, move around quickly and hide from opponents, while standing and shooting exposes your location and is the only way you can fight and deal damage, is the most fresh and interesting idea in modern movement shooters, but because of that, can make Splatoon look super alien to any onlooker who isn't already familiar. Plus, the lack of a personal health bar can cause confusion for first-time players. The idea of the screen becoming more claustrophobic around the edges is unique, but very unclear, and can lead to some players taking fights they cannot win. Of course, experience can clear this up pretty quickly, but it's definitely not for everyone. Comeback mechanics and ranked modes can keep the fights interesting, but sometimes that means these games can drag on for unnecessarily long. They have refined some aspects, which has made the game feel more fluid, but even still, some may not be used to the extra time added to their counter when they've rightfully recaptured the Splat Zone, for example. Gear and ability chunks are a really unique method of playstyle expression, and go a long way to instigate replayability with other weapons and experimentation. That said, grinding to get some of these ability chunks that you need can take longer than some people may want, and there is no guarantee you will get exactly what you want, even if you do look up a chart online to find gear that you can farm abilities with. Super jumping as a risk-reward feature is easily one of the most kinetic aspects about the gameplay. I wanted to highlight that specifically because the long walk of shame in almost every other shooter sucks. All of the characters are teeming with personality, and though sometimes it can be a little overwhelming, you can clearly remember each character not just by their physical design, but also their characteristics, motives, and intentions. In-game options are a real letdown though. Motion controls aside, if you're someone who loves to adjust control stick dead zones and customize reticles, I'm sorry, but what the game gives you by default is all you got. Plus, the in-game music is fun and everything, but there is no way to adjust what songs play in each match, nor any way to turn off the music for a competitive advantage when listening to your opponents behind walls or swimming through ink. It's minor to many, but fundamental to few, and I feel as though it must be highlighted. Seasons lack any meaningful changes to the world aside from Splatfests, so sometimes this bright and charming world looks static and unchanging. It's a minor thing, but noticeable. The limited communication options on the D-pad is a big missed opportunity. Even if they never add any more communication, they could at least add emotes or something. There are just two unused buttons that could really add some more substance to the game. Netcode is horrendous at times. For a good 90% of the time, if your internet's okay, things should run smoothly, but if one person has a terrible connection, they could cause some real damage to the lobby. Sometimes getting unearned kills or terminating lobbies outright. Good thing terminated games don't count against everyone else. The entire package is usually just $60, and while that does include everything, it does not allow for newcomers to test the game to see if they even like it before dropping the money. And in this day and age, especially for movement shooter players and fans, some people simply don't have the money to spend on a risk like that, especially for a shooter this different from the status quo. It may have sounded like I complained a lot there for a bit, but honestly, most of those complaints are pretty minor, just considering the fluidity of the gameplay and all of the fun that you can have with it. So despite the way that I sound, I'm giving this game the objective rating of S tier. Yeah, there are going to be some sweats and tryhards the further up the ranks you get, but for everything that comes in the package and the reasonable retail price, this is objectively one of the most fun and different movement shooters out there right now. Yes, that's even including the whole motion control shenanigans. It's so difficult nowadays to find a game that uplifts shortcomings of new players and expands them into an entire other gameplay aspect without making confusing control schemes or sacrifices. And the fact that Splatoon is able to capitalize and even emphasize that kills and aim don't matter until you learn how to become a better player is always an aspect that all other shooters lack and that I will forever respect. Beginners have a comfortable skill floor, and veterans have a satisfyingly high skill ceiling, and that's evolving daily. Casuals and tryhards alike are matched with their appropriate levels and ranks, and you can see exactly who you are facing against easily before and after every game. Leveling up feels intrinsic and honest to the player because it's crafted to be. It's just shy of X tier, really because of the lack of options and the motion control barrier to entry for those on the fence. It's a little difficult to convince. And for my personal rating, I have to give this game the highest rating at Addictively Fun. The consistency of this series has already done a lot for me, but even this game specifically has innovated with movement and unique concepts, and even the interesting design and art direction. The stories this series tells, as well as the extensive lore and fluid gameplay, make this not only my favorite video game series, but also makes Splatoon 3 my favorite video game. Even during losing streaks, I find myself having fun and returning day after day whenever I have the availability, and this series is even responsible for giving Gamma Centauri and Retoro the characters I use for virtually everything: identities, faces, and designs. I cannot express how much I love this game and its predecessors. Meaning, overall, Splatoon 3 sits objectively high and personally favorable on my rating list. As always, let me know what you guys thought about the video and of the game itself if you have played it. Did you agree with my ratings or not? That's what the comments are for. Anyways, that said, I appreciate y'all for stopping by as always, and I'm gone.